1. Lift off. Hello, welcome to Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob. Welcome to Stream Streak Day 160. 160 days in the same room is brilliant, is the only thing I can say. Shout out to everyone who has joined us live. You guys are great. Big shout out to Toon King Tristan, as I know it's his birthday.
Happy birthday, Tristan.
There you go. Happy birthday to him. Shout out to everyone who has joined us in the chat. I'm joined by Mr. John Theodore Logan Scrivens Esquire. Hey, John.
Whoa.
How are you?
I'm all right. I could be better.
That's true.
But I'm here.
That's true. Can I just say that you're looking particularly swole right now? It looks like you've been gymming it really hard, and I'd say that your shoulder muscles are looking powerful.
Oh,
Good luck
hurt.
there, John.
They do hurt. I have bought a pair of skinny jeans as a result, so
Wait,
that's progress.
What, you bought new skinny jeans?
Yeah, because I needed new trousers.
Okay. So, okay.
Body confidence.
Okay, yeah, go for it. Skinny jeans.
Exactly.
Skinny jeans. Okay, all right. I'll take that. Good. I did not buy any.
I was expecting.
I did not buy any new skinny jeans.
They do look like your sort of trousers, though, Rob, because they are plain black.
Again, you keep calling them trousers. Trousers are different to jeans. Like, not all, like, they're jeans. They're not trousers. It's weird. Like, jeans isn't a subcategory of trouser. That's a weird way to describe it. I don't think that's true at all. Does anyone else think? Does anyone else think that jeans is a subsidiary of trouser? That's weird.
They're a trouser. They've got legs. They cover your legs fully. They have a zip and pockets. Done. It's like saying an army's not an army because it's got tanks instead of infantry. It's still an army.
I still think it's an army, but I just don't think I like the jeans faction of the trousers meta. Don't agree with that at all. If it ain't shorts, get the fuck out. Says Owen. Jay says I agree. Yeah. Also hi. Stufflin, hi. K-Dread, hi. They meet all the requirements of a trouser, but themselves are not a trouser. If I was to say what trousers are you wearing, you'd be like, anyway.
But that's like saying chinos aren't trousers because they're made of chino. Or
no, chinos are chinos.
That's a trouser. A linen shirt is still a shirt, even if it's not a cotton shirt, Rob.
Okay, we need to. Someone needs to get the keywords for trousers right. Anyway, I prefer body slovenliness. Good. I'm actually only wearing onesies at the Super Series. I want everyone to know that before we go any further. We're getting TSM onesies for speed and comfort. Yeah. So today's subject. So today, just a bit of clarity and a bit of apologies to be thrown out around is we were going to talk about Age of Sigmar lists from the weekend, but John's only free day is today, and he was at a 40k tournament the weekend. So I'm going to move that to a show that I'm doing on Friday with Owen, where Owen is going to be looking at the list for his tabletop simulator tournament that you could sign up to, but lists are in tomorrow, called Hammer Time, available. That's this weekend. I'm sure you'll put some links in the chat right now. So if you were expecting that today, I apologize. Big shout out. Thank you to Colin specifically for writing up his list on the Honest Wargame website. But I promise you I will be getting back to that soon. But John has been at a 40k tournament the weekend, so we thought he'd find out some of his experiences of playing a tournament in these COVID times, how he felt about it, and generally what he felt about playing Warhammer anyway. But before we do that, John, just going to say a big shout out to everyone on the Honest Wargame podcast. My hydro homies. That's right. My water warriors. Stay hydrated, bros. I want to say thank you to everyone on the Honest Wargamer Patreon. My Patreon princes. That's what you guys are called. And, of course, all other media that you like. My Twitter. Not sure.
Do they count?
I don't know. But hello, everyone in the Twitch chat. Welcome. So, John, and any shout-outs before we get started from you, John? Who would you like to talk to? Everyone, also, I'm very tired. I'm feeling a bit weird. So if I start saying some weird stuff, apologies. John, go on.
I want to shout out to Nikos. Just because, why not? Because there was a nice picture you put of him on Twitter, which made me remember he existed.
Wow.
Just purely because for a brief moment I forgot he existed because I've had a lot of Tom Layton this weekend. So
you need a bit more Nick in your life.
I think so. I think everyone needs a bit more fit Nichols in their life, right?
That's true.
That's true. I just heard a yes from behind me, so I think we can all agree there.
Good. Can we talk about Nikos's Chrome Dart? Yeah, we can. Let's start off with that, John. Show host extraordinaire Nick Pert. Nikolai Pertoli is his actual full name. Most people don't know that he's Russian. Oh, I'd also like to start the show with an apology. On Monday, I talked about some lists. Specifically, I talked about lists from another country, and I got that country's name completely wrong. In fact, it's old version. I'd like to... No, it's not funny. It's not funny.
That's what I'm saying. Oh, fuck, 'cause it's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate.
Well, anyway, they took it really well, but I want to apologise. I'd just like to clarify that my command of geography is not particularly great, and also geopolitics generally, also, I'd argue, is slim to middling. So, yeah.
Check your facts, Rob.
So yeah, well done, you guys. Anyway, so I'd like to just issue an apology. We all can make mistakes, and I'm definitely someone who can make more than the average amount. So anyway,
just how you learn from them and kind of move forward, right? Got to be positive.
It is. It's all about your personal journey on this earth, right, John? What about your personal journey? Oh wait, we were talking about Nick. Tell me about his army.
He's been doing a lot of Wraith Guard and I want to say a Wave Serpent in a chrome style paint scheme. But rather than it just being here, I'm painting a chrome metal. They look kind of shiny, great. It's like a non-metallic metal, and they look fantastic. I'm actually a little upset when I see the pictures of the progress. I'm just like, can you stop being so good, man? This is hurting.
Yeah, they look really nice. You can follow Nick on Twitter at just
Nikos, I believe.
Just _ Nikos. But you do have to produce the bit. Are you wearing a check shirt today in solidarity? Oh my god!
Oh, for fuck's sake! Did you have Chex Mix for your breakfast as well?
Oh my god, you guys are the worst. Okay, well, Undead Ben says he's going to his first ever competitive 40k event in 2 weeks. John, this is where we get to intro you.
Guidance, then.
Thanks, Undead Ben, for helping us segue back to the main topic of the day. So, John, you attended an event in real life this weekend in Greater Yarmouth. Is that correct?
No.
Where was it?
On the map, Greater Yarmouth is right down the bottom, Rob. I was somewhere in the middle, just above Nottingham. So I was in Sutton in Ashfield in a lovely gaming centre. What?
Isn't it near Skegness?
I don't even know now, Rob. You're making me challenge it. Anyway, let's continue rather than worrying about where places exactly are. So Sutton in Ashfield, there's a lovely venue called Sanctuary. They used to be in a reclaimed church, which was great in the summer because it was nice and cool. But in the winter, you froze your balls off. It wasn't too great in that respect. But they've got a new venue, which is a part of a reclaimed job centre. Because apparently no one needs jobs up there anymore, so it's fine. The venue as a whole was really good. So instead of it being essentially a portaloo in the back of a church, they now had full kind of toilets. Hand dryers were amazing.
Excellent. Good.
As a venue, it looks great. They're kind of a soft launch at the moment. So they have things like they've got a kitchen they're fitting at the moment, I believe they said. So very much it's kind of going to be a cafe, hobby centre, the community kind of hub locally, which I think is kind of what we all really crave a lot of the time. They did have a very cool new company they were using to get a nice supply of really premium donuts, which I was just like, oh, that sounds great. Got there on the Sunday. They'd all been eaten by the guys that went on the Saturday.
Yeah, donuts is what.
Donuts. See, you knew about them, did you? Oh gosh, they look amazing.
Yeah, they're just down the road from me, literally just over yonder way. That way is where they are.
Paired with good coffee as well was just like that's game changing for me. Because to me,
so you wanna play Warhammer very much like the traditional portraying of a policeman.
Well.
Coffee and donuts.
I could have a cronut instead, mix it up a bit, or maybe a yum yum.
We could do that, yeah.
Or a Belgian bun. Either way, I do like my pastries. So even maybe a savoury pastry. We could have sausage rolls, Rob. That could mix things up a bit.
You like pastries? That's interesting.
Yeah, it's one of my things. Pastry is one of those weird things that gets me. Even though I'm lactose intolerant, I still treat myself and then regret it. It's the forbidden fruit.
Well, so you played an event. So let's talk about the pack, obviously, because it's COVID and stuff. What were the do's and do nots?
So you had to wear a mask whenever you're in the building, full time, apart from if you're drinking. So if you're at the table, like that. If you left the gaming area to go to the toilets or vice versa, there was hand sanitizer at each end and dotted around the hall as well. So basically, if you ever left the tables, you needed to do your hands. So there was very much a kind of a routine to that. All the tables were spread out. So where normally there'd be 2 tables side by side with a gap between them, there was just a table with a 6-foot space next to you. So you had kind of good distancing. And the way that the rows were done, the blank space was alternating. So there was kind of a game, and then diagonal to you in the next row was another game, and it was well thought out. And then in the pack, there was also things kind of clarifying not to use each other's dice, don't touch each other's models, which as a piece of etiquette, I wouldn't anyway, because I think that's one of the most offensive things you can do is pick up someone's model. Because if you damage it, it's on you, right? It's like, I don't want to pick someone's lovely hand-painted model with my coffee-stained hands and then drop it.
I'm very confused by like loads of this. How have you got coffee all over your hands?
Because I'm a clumsy guy. You got to think of the worst situation, right, Rob? So if someone picks up your model and they've just been like, "Oh, I've just got food and drink all over me," boom. No, I find that's rude. So it was good that there was very much set in stone the do's and don'ts that you'd expect, and kind of following the guidelines.
The do's and donuts.
Donuts, yes. Sorry. The rounds were 2:45, so 2 hours 45 minutes, following the full, just rolled randomly each round from the old GT pack, which was great. So I kind of got to go and experience some of the missions kind of firsthand rather than kind of practice games, which was quite good.
Because I was just looking to do the donut question. It was a 3-day event. No,
so it's a 1-day event, 3-game event, each 2 hours 45 minutes with a slight lunch break after game 1. So very much like a Rogue Trader tournament would be, like a 1-day event normally, sort of timings wise.
What's a Rogue Trader event?
That's what the RTT. Whenever you see a 1-day event and it's called an RTT, that's what it's meant to be referencing, I believe.
Rogue Trader tournament.
I believe so. It's meant to, like a GT is normally 2 days, I think, minimum.
And it stands for grand. That stands for Grand Tournament.
Yeah, at least that's what I thought. How did you not know this? You've been to so many more events than me.
Number one, I've been to almost 0 RTTs in my life ever.
Yeah.
Also, I think it's a real Americanism to call them RTTs and GTTs or whatever. And
as the ITC kind of had more of a prevalence, I found that those terminologies have kind of slipped into it more.
Yeah, and I literally don't like anything below the Canadian line. I don't listen to anymore. Like Canada and above is the only thing I listen to. That side of the world, and then
is that why Joe Pagano never gets you returning his calls?
That's exactly why. JP. Yeah, you take that. Yeah, I've never heard of that term. I don't think a lot of other people really do actually use that term either. But whatever.
Well, there we go. We've at least clarified.
So it reminds me of. Can I just segue a moment? I'm sorry. It reminds me of me and John are into the same sort of music, kind of. John's into much worse version of it than me, but that's fine. And then obviously, that's his taste.
Dare you?
Well, but we're in similar sort of music, and we would I've listened to a load of English bands who have weirdly American accents, from the lead singer.
When they sing, yeah.
When they sing, and then they come off stage and they don't have American accents.
Big sick Brummy accent type of thing as well. Quite often, it's just like, what?
Yeah. So that's like a big thing. Well, it was a big thing in kind of alternative scene generally because you all wanted to sound like Blink 182. Let's go for that. That's not the case, but sure. Can we do a whole show on Warhammer abbreviations? Yes. Shout out to all my pedants in the chat. Let's get into it. Every abbreviation you can think of. Anyway, John, my point is you sometimes feel like, especially with 40k, especially with 40k, that there's that Americanization as well, because so much coverage and information is given out from the American side of things. That's my question.
Yeah, and also there's that weird thing that kind of, I thought you were going down the route of all those bands, when people were trying to be all cool, they'd just abbreviate the band's names as well. And so you'd be like, what you on about? You just wrote a load of letters at me.
Yeah, exactly. They're like
as well.
They're like 2K, 40K, RTT, USA. And you're like, what?
Go team.
Yeah, go team. Let's go. I'm like, I'm not going. I don't understand what's happening. Anyway, this whole chat is TLDR. Thanks, Darren.
Yeah.
Big shout out to go check out Can Hammer Darren. He's a great guy. Also,
he talks a lot about custodies.
He talks about a lot about. He talks a lot about a lot of stuff. He's a great guy. He's also got a great laugh. If you ever want to, like, he just genuinely is like a human hype man for making you feel good about the world. Yeah. He's
good at keeping you alive.
He's also that. Anyway,
jeez. Okay. That was a year ago, you realise, Rob?
I know. It was actually the celebration. Big love to Darren in the chat for 1 year ago as of Monday. So 2 days ago, resetting my heart for me and bringing you all. There are literally dozens of people who wish you hadn't, Darren. But I'm really happy that you did it.
I'm on the fence still.
Yeah, some days I'm on the fence. Generally, I'm okay with it. So thanks, I appreciate it. Yes, this is all Darren's fault. It is. Oh, fit Nick. Right, so it was a 1 day RTT, 40k, 2,000 points or not?
They were 2,000 points, so very much out of the book. So I think a lot of events are starting to do this whole kind of, we'll give the book a go, just play it as printed as best as they can. Because then everyone's kind of playing, like in the Age of Sigmar, it seems like there's that whole kind of route that people can go, right, we're playing this, done. There's no kind of, well, we're doing this, there's not realms, and it's just straightforward.
Yeah, okay, good.
It seemed a positive, and it meant I could practice playing games, even if I wasn't necessarily playing people, for them to be practicing tournament sort of play.
All right, sweet. And so what army did you take? This is the real question, because you do know that you're in a very elite group at the minute. There aren't many people around the world who've actually played any competitive 40k or even Age of Sigmar for a very long while, because events have been very, very low key. Did you feel like, I'm going to ask this question, and there's nothing loaded behind this.
Yeah.
Like, nothing loaded behind this at all. Did you feel like it was comfortable and okay to have attended? Like, yeah, what do you think?
I think it was all right. I feel, because every person that was there, I didn't really see anyone kind of breaking social distancing. So it very much felt like people were within kind of the remit of what they should be doing. And as a result, we're all at least getting to then play a game. I think if there'd been people messing around and not complying to masks and things like that, I might have been a little bit more hesitant. Mm-hmm. But I was apprehensive initially, kind of the thought of going to it. I was just like, should I? But because it was kind of a smaller event at a venue I was aware of and kind of knew, and the TO is someone I've gone to events for before and enjoyed the experience, I thought, cool, let's go for it. So I think it's one of those things, you can pick and choose. And if it's small events like that, it's probably easier to manage and it's less of a risk, perhaps. I suppose there's still always going to be a risk, but until the government gives us guidelines to say that we can't do things like that, I wouldn't hesitate as much, I think. So if the government said, no, you should discourage those sorts of size gatherings, full stop, I might have been more on the fence, but it's still going to happen if I'm not going. Right. And I'm at that kind of point now, I'm like, I could go, or I could stay at home or stay at work and still be just as likely to maybe catch it. If I'm at work, I'm engaging with a lot of different people anyway. Mm-hmm. So
because John works in a toy shop.
In a toy shop, so
just for clarity.
Yeah, so there's that kind of, to me, if I'm going to get it, I'm going to get it.
Okay, all right, fair enough. I guess the real kind of like question for people is spreading it. Like one of the things that we're doing at Super Series is we're building screens in between the 4 tables that we have. So not only obviously there'll be masks, but they're physical screens between the tables.
Yes.
But ultimately, anyway, we could talk about this all day. There's loads of people.
Yeah, it's one of those things I don't think there's a right answer for it. So it's very much you do.
There is a right answer. There is a right answer. Yeah. The right answer is we all stay the fuck home. Like that's the right answer, but none of us actually want to. So it's mitigating those risks as much as possible, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'd still be at home. I'd be at work. So let's put it that way. Evil.
Anything to get me out of this office at this stage is my.
Yes.
Right. So, what army did you take? Let's talk some actual 40k.
I went quite off the ball and went a bit weird, and I went with some Space Marines. I took my Dark Angels, so I had vanilla Space Marine bits. So I had some of the new Indomitus stuff in my list, but also some of the cool, quirky Dark Angels bits. So for you guys that weren't in the chat on Saturday when we're talking through my list, I will quickly get it up and quickly run through it for you as well.
Okay. It's exciting. Wait, can I ask you a question and see if this applies before you tell me the list? If I was to say to you, pick out the 4 key units, don't read me the whole list, just pick out the 4 key units. What 4 key units would you pick?
So Talon Master. So with a relic, he has 2 to hit in shooting, can just fly 14 inches, has twin assault cannons and twin heavy bolters. It just will delete anything with not too much of an armor save or without invuln, because it's toughness 6 with the assault cannons, toughness 5 on the heavy bolters. It's quite good at killing things like Gravis Marines, and it can get wherever it wants to, and it's quite easy to hide. So him, my Plasma Inceptors, because they can just drop down, delete something, and then just go and cause some mayhem clearing up other stuff. And then probably my Contemptor Dreadnought because of his survivability as well. So he's great in combat if he gets in. Also quite a good distraction piece I found. So across the weekend, he was often a big target, and then they couldn't quite kill him because he's got such survivability. So I think those would be my top 3.
Okay, so you only had 3?
Because I then think probably if I had to go for a 4th one, it wouldn't be Samael because I found him quite underwhelming. It'd probably be actually my my normal intercessors. So giving them auto bolt rifles was quite vital, I found in the end. So rather than having armor penetration always, having 3 shots each, so 15 shots per unit, was great at clearing out units.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, if I could kill their troops, great.
Because I think it's quite an interesting way of looking at a list over listing out the specific units. Yeah. I think the key units, because we talk a lot. So Tom, the 40k Tom, obviously we'll talk a lot about win conditions. There are so how an army will win a game. I talk a lot about bully units or units that control board space through their ability to affect damage or just control damage. So there's some terminology again. It's not meant to be. It's not intentionally confusing. It's more just trying to actually understand a list. Because I think when you read a list out, this is one of the key parts. And I'll kind of tip my hand to something that we're doing in the future now, which might be of interest to you, Scrivo, to kind of talk about as you list in your games. Is for the Super Series when we look at lists, we'll be kind of trying to identify 3 to 4 key units as opposed to reading a list out. Because John, you've been to loads of events. One of the big problems with going to these large scale events
it's a lot of information.
It's a lot of information. I think like if you just read any list out to me now, even an Age of Sigmar list, I think I'd be like, like it's, do you know what I mean? Like it's
the things you need to look out for, and you know that are going to have a direct effect on the game outside of just being there type of things. Like to me, ironically, normally the troop choices might not be as vital. But say if I'd taken something like Infiltrate and they were area denying deep striking, that would be something we might look out for as a result if they've got a lot of stuff that's coming in from deep strike. Yes. So there's those kind of elements, isn't it, where you're looking at the kind of their role and how that then affects the matchup.
Also, key units are ideally neutered, like just like you said. So like your key unit in your army could have been terminated. It wasn't, but it could have been. For example, but the ability to big shout out to Diachasm in the chat. Like the ability, the ability to identify that normally this list would want to use. Normally, a list would want to deep strike, but because, like you say, they've got infiltrators, they haven't. Actually, look, that's a key strength of theirs, and this has been neutered by this unit. Is I think quite interesting. I think that there's a more like succinct way of reviewing lists, but it's also more punchy.
Yes. And that, as an example, ironically, was a consideration I had when looking at how to build my list, because I've seen kind of a lot of chats are all kind of going nuts about the whole concept of forward deploying stuff and then denying people being able to go forward, it made me then consider which units can I use that don't rely on having to deep strike or have the flexibility that I could just use them normally and they wouldn't be rubbish. So then I kind of looked at that as a piece, like you would with characters, limiting how many you've got so you're not giving away a secondary. I was looking at that as an element of the list building as well.
That's fun. Good. And let's hear about this. There's also, just talking about the COVID thing, sorry, really quickly, there's also the fact that if we all stay at home, and sadly a lot of these venues will still not exist when we're ready to go back to normal. I agree with that as well.
Yeah. It's not nice at all, is it, in any respect?
Yeah, for me, it's not an issue, but for outside the health risks, people need to consider those things, in my opinion. Gitley, I agree with that as well. It's good to deprioritize lists in discussion. So much online discussion is list, nothing else. Just because people who think net listing is all they need to do when the why and how units are played are much more important. I would agree with that. I think those key units and what they bring to the table is sometimes like, anyway, that's what we're going to do for the Super Series. It's the next evolution of how we're going to try and discuss lists, because again, for an audience, it's a lot of information to front load, and you could always just read it on your own, right?
And if you can just go, right, look at these 4 units, how they play, it gives the audience something to look at, rather than kind of going and trying to look at the whole big picture. And if they don't necessarily have an understanding of how the army operates, giving them a heads up that they need to look out and watch what the Inceptors do means that they've got something to focus on. And maybe that then leads how your commentary works as well.
Yeah. Okay. So those key units that you just discussed there. So what were your matchups and how did they go?
Right. So the first one was against Raven Guard. It was a really nice guy called Paul. He had a very similar sort of list to me, apart from he front-loaded into... So he had some of the bits like the Outrider bikes, but he had 3 of the Redemptor Dreadnoughts and an Invicta Warsuit. So that was instantly my worry, because I didn't have necessarily something to deal with all 3 of them. And obviously with the way that... Because he was a successor chapter for Raven Guard, I was worried that he'd just come right at me if he got first turn. He did get first turn, but ironically, he only scored 11 points for the first round, and then I counteracted with 9. So it was quite an unusual situation where I honestly thought I was going to lose it from that first turn, and then the dice actually let him down a little bit, and some of the positioning, because the terrain I think had a lot more of an impact than we both appreciated initially as well, because the table itself was so the Game Mat EU wooden ITC terrain.
Yes.
So the 2 L shapes, it was very much that, which has a lot of line of sight blocking stuff, because obviously a lot of those buildings are bigger than 5 inches. And so that actually made it quite easy to hide, which I thought was quite interesting as a thing I hadn't appreciated in my practice games. So a lot of my practice games,
that terrain is.
Yes, it was a lot more useful than I was ever, because I completely switched off about the kind of the terrain being very functional like that. I was building terrain tables in practice games that were just a load of plastic Games Workshop Mechanica stuff and all sorts of other bits and pieces. So there was places to hide, but not quite to that degree.
Yeah,
I think that was the thing I was out of habit with.
Yeah, I think there's a significant difference. I think also, like, problematically, people not being allowed to go to tournaments, they're going to practice a lot of games at home.
And what they've got.
with ill-fitting terrain. So big shout out to the WTC guys. You can download their 40k terrain pack to give you some indication. Yes. That's also free, unlike the Games Workshop one. So obviously get along with that. And I know Pete, who's in the chat, has been organising some 40k events over in Northern Ireland, and in that situation, he has told me, we've had conversations, that the terrain has been super important and has affected the games quite considerably. I mean, the 3 or 4 practice games that I've played, it's been significant, and I've actually really enjoyed it. I think it's really good, and I can't wait to. I mean, there are still some problems with it, like structurally. But I think it's a good. I don't know. Did you feel good about it, even though you were getting used to it? Were you like, oh, actually, this is good?
I do enjoy it, because then there becomes an actual reason for the terrain to exist, not just as line of sight blocking as well. The fact that there were some bits that were industrial buildings, which are the -1 to hit or -1 to save, whichever way around it was. It was nice that there was bits of terrain that had different functions, so it felt like there was more to it than just whether I could see something or I couldn't see something. And that's what I don't miss about 8th edition, because that was a bit too granular, the terrain for that. And I think it's a step forward at least. So
I think it's good. Okay, all right, sweet. So and so the game went well.
It went well. I picked Bring It Down, Engage on All Fronts, and because I really couldn't. His list was quite good, like mine was for limiting which secondaries you could just go right. I can max that one out. I went with, because we were playing Scorched Earth. I went with the action one to basically just bin to raise one of the objectives, which I thought I'd get two of them, but I didn't, and it was quite telling. And we both struggled. We both went with it in the end. I struggled because he went first and shot my bikes first, and that was a lot of my mobility of my army. I couldn't get Engage on All Fronts as quickly and then maintain it, so that then let me down. So a lot of the time, I think when looking at these kind of secondaries, I think it's important to know where your kind of blind spot is if you go second, and if there isn't enough cover to hide everything that you'd want to hide. And that was the thing I learned from that first game. So it ended up being 80-58 to Paul, which was all right. I thought it was going to be a lot worse than that, and it came kind of close. By the end, he was denying me on primaries and stuff just because I was too thin on the ground, and he was picking and choosing where he could kind of focus, which was smart, which was good.
Yeah, did you see the Goonhammer article recently saying that going second gives you only a 42% chance of winning, where going first gives you a 58? Did you see that?
I did, and I kind of disagree, because from my experience, going second has actually been quite useful. So quite often, if you've got, so for example, my opponent that I quite often play against plays a lot of Drakari. He uses deploy scramblers, and going second helps him for that because he can just kind of get it done.
Okay.
Because he was finding he didn't have to worry about it. So I think it's very situational, and it probably helps with a certain play style as well.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And then my next round after a quick break was Surround and Destroy, and it was against a lovely guy called Kyle, who his Ultramarine list was very much, I think the wording he used was, "This is what I happen to have painted." So it was very much a hodgepodge of lots of different bits, including just a repulsor, not a repulsor executioner, but it was Tigerius, minus Calgar, a few of the new bits, and it was just kind of like, okay, this is almost like a mirror match, but you've got a little castle to have. And it was a challenge. We both went with the same secondaries because they seemed to be what kind of matched us both. So it was Engage on All Fronts, which seems to be one I always go for. Grind them down, because I just thought, if I'm going to kill stuff, I'm going to kill stuff well, hopefully. Mm-hmm. And then raise the banners, because I needed a third one, and the Surround and Destroy had two objectives in our deployment zones, so it felt like I could actually put some banners on that, and then he'd have to deal with those. This one worked a bit better for me. I went first, so my Deathwing Knights, because there was a central objective, just piled forward into that and just sat on it, and being hidden behind a 3-up invuln, they were kind of just sat there going, "You've got to shoot us off now." And there was 2 bits of ruins giving them kind of awkward fire lines that you couldn't necessarily get to them, which was quite cool. So
okay, all right. But did you feel like, again, it's interesting that even in COVID times, I find this very, very fascinating. That even during COVID times, people are going to tournaments just with their hodgepodge collection of stuff.
Yeah,
like they're not like these like train all day, roll dice all night, 18 content creators at one tournament sort of a setup. It's it's
a lot of people. This is their one time to get and play. And from what I gathered from him, he'd not necessarily played that many games of Ninth, because I don't think he necessarily had too many local friends that were playing, or if he did, it didn't always match up. So I think it's quite a challenging time. That I think a lot of the people I found as a whole at the event, their play practice of Ninth Edition was quite limited. And I think I worked out I had about 14 games of Ninth so far.
Okay.
Before the weekend, so I felt a little bit prepared. Yeah, I felt a little prepared, and I at least knew. I think I'd played through each of the missions at least once, so which is what I like to do, because then at least I've done it. I can learn from those mistakes. Fair enough. That game, so close. Each round, it felt like we were basically either way. So the first 4 rounds, I was ahead by a couple of points each round at the end of the battle round, which was just so close. And then the last round, it came down to, let's see what it was. It was, I had one more banner than him, and I was engaging on all fronts combined with my primary. So I ended up beating him by 5 points, which was a great game. Getting to the end of turn 5, 20 minutes left of the round as well. We'd kind of taken our time, but still managed to get it knocked out. It was good, and it felt like it could have gone either way. We both had some really sort of rubbish dice rolling in the middle, which was kind of funny because it's like with Space Marines and we got reroll mechanics, yet we're still struggling to hit things.
I don't think anyone else finds it funny. I'd just like you to know that.
Well, I find it funny because I don't have reroll all hits.
Okay.
So I've got a slog handicap. I've just got reroll ones.
Yeah, fair enough.
Which is fine. But yeah, that was a nice game, but it very much felt like I was playing mirror matches, but with just a slight variation of flavour. So the actual, I think I can see, I very much agree now, this whole concept of if Dark Angels, Blood Angels, and Space Wolves get put into the Space Marine Codex at events, especially if there's kind of team events, having them all as one, because they are essentially the same army, even more so than I could ever quite imagine, because even if you were playing a specific flavour, you probably still had Eradicators, probably Blade Guard in your list as well. That's what seemed to be what was happening on the weekend. So
that's quite interesting. So effectively, what you're saying is the sub-faction rules aren't giving you enough differential to change out, and you're all still running basically the same sort of stuff.
A lot of the time, and it was just then leaning a bit, like my list lent a little bit into the Ravenwing stuff with the 2 characters. I had some Deathwing Knights because they're just a better version of normal Terminators because they're not -1 to hit. But otherwise, they could have been another faction. It would have been a different slight mechanic. Like if my guys were stationary, they were rerolling ones. That could have been a completely different chapter tactic, and it probably would have operated quite similarly.
That's really interesting. That is really interesting. And
I think it comes to personal preference, perhaps.
Is there general conversation in team tournaments of not letting the different, like, to make Marines all count as the same?
I think that's, from what I've been sort of reading, if they're a supplement of the Space Marine book, they'd get kind of, generally I think TOs were leaning into just putting them in, and that makes sense to me because they are basically the same army. And then that hopefully means that in those events you don't have the situation where there's potentially 5 Marine lists in a team event.
I think that's
which any more diversity to get rid of there being that many Marines, I think is a good positive, despite being a person playing Marines.
Yeah, I think I also agree with that statement as well. Okay, all right, sweet. And then your final game?
The last game, I was against a bit of a weird list actually. It felt like an 8th edition list, so it had half Blood Angels and half Imperial Fists. So they didn't get their super doctrines, but I don't feel they were punished for it particularly. So it was a guy called Marcus, I think something to do with the English ETC team.
Okay.
We played, there's a scenario called Priority Target, which is horrible diagonal deployments. His list was quite front-loaded, so it had things like an Astarath, the big axe dude for the Blood Angels, and a Smash Captain. So he went first. His Smash Captain ran across the table, smacked Samael in the head and killed him. And he took down, I think it was my Blade Guard, he took down at the same time in that same charge, and I just went, cool. Then Samael replied on death, killing him, which was quite funny because I went with Assassinate as my as one of my secondaries because he had 8 characters in his list, which to me I wouldn't do. It's giving too many opportunities for a secondary personally. If I'd want to kill them, I'm going to kill them, aren't I? So, and it became very much it was a frustrating game for me because I could tell it was the end of the day. I was taking it kind of with a bit of a pinch of salt, but he was very much, he'd say something, but wasn't very clear. And I'd sort of say to him, can you just clarify what that is? Or what are you rolling? Because Astarath has some fancy like buff mechanics to it. And I just had to say to him politely, you're rolling something and saying something. Can you tell me what it is you're doing? And he started to a little bit. And then it was a little bit frustrating because he was kind of not clear as a whole on a few things. Like he declared he was charging on my Deathwing Knights, and then rolled, and then went for my Inceptors, and I was like, you can't do that. And I'm not the most combative of people. You know me. I won't kick off. And I did. I was like, dude, that's not cool. Be clearer with your declarations. He went, oh, we'll take it all back. And I was like, no, you've done it now. My Inceptors died, and I was like, cool. Those Deathwing assault guys that did that, I was like, they're now marked. I'm going to kill them. And basically that charge cost him the game, I think, because that and him bottlenecking his scouts back in his corner being all defensive meant he wasn't holding. So there was a couple of
that.
turns where he was only holding one objective, and it came down to him killing my Contemptor Dreadnought, which was holding my second objective. He was still on 9 wounds, round 5, and he was trying to shoot it with Thunderfire cannons. Because he had 2 Thunderfire cannons and a Whirlwind, and I was literally like, cool. And I won by 3 points.
Well done.
So I felt like I scraped that one in. It was just like, at first I was kind of like, this is not a fun game. I'm not enjoying this one. It probably is one of my least interesting ones, and it's just...
It also sounds like Born Again Manchild says. It sounds like that's a little more than not being clear.
Yeah. That was the time where I just went, right. And there was one other interaction with my Deathwing Knights where there's the little 1-inch tall walls, and I charged across it, and he went, no, I said, right, so it's 1 inch up, 1 inch down, and then I finish off my charge. And he went, no, it's 1 inch up, 1 across, and 1 down. I went, fine, we'll play it your way. My Deathwing Knight's master, who's got the flail that's damaged spills, killed the 5 scouts on the objective. So at that point I just went, there you go. Didn't need the entire unit, but it was just very much kind of like, I want to have a friendly game. I don't want to have this whole situation. So I was like, cool. Yeah.
To be honest, he sounds like he sounds like a dickhead. Like I'll just sit for you. So easy.
It felt like it. I had an experience with him. I think I learned a lot from.
Maybe he's having a bad day as well.
So,
Let's be
exactly.
nice.
I didn't want to be particularly that guy. So I just kind of said to Mikey, the TO, afterwards, it's like, I played him. It wasn't the most kind of fun experiences. Just thought I'd let you know. And he kind of just rolled his eyes. Kind of, I think it was a thing that the guy might not be always the most fun to play against. So, but
okay, yeah. That's
basically
just draining. Did you find it? And also, like a shitty way to end a day.
Yeah. Well, I came out of it going, right, I scraped the win, and I ended up 10th place. So out of 24 people, I came 10th. So I felt that was a positive, considering
24, and so there was 24 people at the event, but you felt it was like it's still so it must be quite a fairly big venue.
Yeah, it's got space for, I think it was 48 tables.
Wow, so nearly 100.
If they were normally, so yeah, so you could do a full size kind of 2-dayer on there, which would be quite cool.
One day. Well, that's a real shame for them that they've set that up and now you can't.
But they're very much the way that because I was chatting to Rich, one of the owners of Sanctuary, and he was kind of like saying that they've kind of done a soft launch, doing the gaming space as a private thing where people can book it. They're introducing the cafe bits bit by bit, doing it as a takeout, and very much kind of it's better to get rolling with something that they were going to be doing anyway. Like they couldn't not move into the new venue, but at the same time they need to make the best of the situation. And so as a result, things like the kitchen they're doing as a second stage, which I think is sensible, right? So if they can keep the money churning in, they're not just spanking all the money and then finding it's not working out. So
yeah, that's good. That's exciting. And it's always nice to see new venues being set up all over, even in these really hard times. But was it fun throwing bones again? That's the real question.
It was great to play against people that weren't within my very tight-knit local bubble. So I've played quite a lot of socially distanced games with kind of some of my club mates. But you're playing the same people in the same armies you're used to playing and on the same terrain that you used to play in. And so you end up playing a very different game because you know the limitations or the restrictions of how the terrain interacts. So you're just like, cool, I know I can get to that. Or I know how he's going to play. And it's not the same. There's something about playing a complete stranger and it being an actual challenge in the fact that there's that uncertainty rather than knowing that they're going to roll you over as well.
Yeah, I think it's nice that I think that's one of the things we all enjoy about going to different countries, right? And not different countries, sorry, different events. Yeah. Different events is meeting new people. But your two first guys you played, they sound great.
They were sound guys. They were the sort of people that if they were local to me, I'd probably play them again.
Okay. Well, yeah, exactly. Good.
And that's what you want, really. So
and the last guy, you kick him out your club. Easy peasy. So
I just think you wouldn't get a game. My local clubs like that. If people are not the funnest to play, people tend to just not play them.
Which I think is fair. So would you encourage people? I suppose it's really down to personal choice, isn't it, about going to events? Don't worry, I won't ask you that question.
No, I feel it's one of those things, if you can make that choice yourself, just be conscious of, maybe scout out the venue, look at how the TO or the people organising it have been in recent time and maybe make that judgment based on that as well. So a pack could say one thing and then how they implement it could be very different as well. So it's very much be cautious, I'd say.
I think that's fair. Yeah, that's fair. Be
Especially
cautious.
if it's in your local area. Like, say if there was one that opened up in Nottingham in a small venue, and you could walk around there, Rob.
Mm.
You couldn't you? It makes it a bit too easy to consider then, perhaps. So
Yeah. Well, yeah. I guess to each their own. I think that's the thing as a community that we all have to just recognize right now. You've got some really major events, obviously shutting down. CanCon shut down, which is super sad.
Yeah.
Like there's all these events closing off, and so I think it's going to be quite hard. Like again, big shout out to the guys at Sanctuary, and I know it was Mikey from Hellstorm who ran it as well. So shout out to the Hellstorm boys for running a safe event. I think
they did it was great. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a real positive step for anyone running safe and conscientious tournaments. I think that's really, really important that they do so. So congratulations and good work to them. And I think it's also important that the venue's able to facilitate it. Like you said, it could fit twice the amount of people in, but they just halved it.
That's smart, right? That's them doing what they needed to do.
Is that even half? Wait, hold on. If it's 48 tables, is it 48 players or 48 tables?
48 players worth, I think it was.
Right, so that would only be 24. So that would only be 24 tables.
Yeah.
Okay, so they literally halved it, so it's 12 tables. That's the right decision. Yeah. That's really good. Yeah.
And it didn't feel like they were compromising on the quality of the gaming experience either, in that respect.
Yeah, I think, like Mima is saying in the chat, I think all we're going to do right now as a community is just do smaller events, which I think is super cool.
Yeah.
I think that's really fun. I like that. I think it's going to be a really fun experience for people, and it's a little bit more. That's what we're going to do when we've got the arena set up. We're just going to hold an event every month, one for Age of Sigmar, one for 40k. We'll just do some singles events and just run 16 people, just keep it small, and just have a nice time, right?
And I think it's nice to actually just play one day of gaming, actually, because I've traditionally been a sucker for it. If I've had to travel somewhere, I've gone, right, it's a 2-dayer, let's go big or go home and go to a big event. And now that's not there. It was actually kind of nice. I still had my part of my weekend. It wasn't such a commitment of my own time as well, which was kind of probably a bit refreshing, actually, and probably healthier for me that I'm not just giving up my weekend off to just be absolutely whacked when I go back to work.
Yeah,
in answer to what OJ just asked, my lift up, my mate Tom, he came 13th with his Drakari list, so he had kind of a bit of a hodgepodge list as well, because we've both been looking at that kind of approach of lots of troop choice units to go and do things and the mobility and stuff. So he had things like Reaver jet bikes, which he was testing out at the event because he'd played with them a bit and kind of they were a bit hit and miss. And I don't think he's going to carry on using them, but it was a good way to test them on other lists because you can't really test a tournament list against the same opponent. It just becomes samey.
Yeah.
Because when you know how to deal with each other's list, it's kind of like it's not really a fair shout on that list.
Balegrave as asked, did I miss an overview of what was in the Dark Angels army included? Just wrap us up, John, with a quick fire through of what it was in.
So there was a Primaris Chaplain who had a relic, so he had a 6-inch bubble for his auras. I had Samael on his jet bike, and he was the Warlord with Master Maneuver, which meant he could Dark Angels within his 6-inch bubble could re-roll charges and advances and re-roll ones. I had a Talon Master with the Angels with the Corvus Oculus relic, which meant he was hitting on 2s. People within range of him were ignoring the benefits of cover as well, because that's the trait that Talon Masters have. I had 3 squads of Intercessors, all with auto bolt rifles, but one squad was made into veterans, so I paid a CP for them to get an extra attack, which didn't really help, I've got to admit. I then had a squad of 5 Deathwing Knights who had just a standard loadout, a squad of 3 Blade Guard veterans, which were just pretty solid all 3 games. I then had my Relic Contemptor Dreadnought, which had 2 Chain Fists with plasma blast guns inside, so I could use Weapons of the Dark Age if I needed it, and then a Cyclone Missile Launcher on top. Then I had 2 squads of the Outrider Bikes and a squad of 6 Plasma Inceptors. So it was a lot of kind of mobility, bodies on the ground, but minimum sized units, and goal was just to get out there, sit on stuff, and then shoot stuff down when I could. And it was a nice. It felt like a nice solid list of mobility, but the bikes were just too flimsy. I don't think I'll be taking them until they get access to actual stratagems. Because unfortunately for Dark Angels, bike keyword doesn't mean anything. So if you're playing vanilla Space Marines, they are biker keywords. So the skilled rider stratagem works on them. All of the Dark Angel stratagems refer to Ravenwing biker. They're not Ravenwing bikers yet. So although Games Workshop have said you can paint them as this, mechanically on the table they are not reflected. That and the Deathwing for the veterans, a little bit frustrating, but it's early into the edition. I'm not too surprised. I think that'll change now with the Codex. So,
I think the Marine dominance. Did you? I know you've touched on this already, but do you feel like the Marine dominance at the event was particularly high, and could you see why, having only played Marines all weekend and playing with Marines yourself, it maybe felt a little stale? Maybe
I wouldn't say stale because there was lots of different approaches, but it was very much a lot of the new stuff. So it was new in as much as not many people had got to play against a lot of the Indomitus stuff. So I think it was fresh in that respect, but I still think it was a silly amount, like half the field was Marines basically.
And what did win the event? Was it Marines?
The winners, it was Nurgle. So it was a load of the tanks, loads of Nurglings.
Was it Death Guard or Nurgle?
I think it was technically Death Guard, but it had a lot of demons in it as well. It was all demon engine heavy. It looked nasty. So it was a cool looking list, but at the same time, I would not have enjoyed playing it.
Oh, was it the Defiler list? Was it the Plague Burst?
3 Defilers and Defilers, yeah.
Yeah, Defilers are king right now. And the other half was Nurgle, yeah.
Nurglings, which just sit there and tar pit and hold objectives, so. And they get put in first, don't they, as well? Yeah.
Yeah, you can make them pretty grim dark, I'm not going to lie, which is exactly what you want. You want a machine that's been taken over by a demon that crawls its way out of the pit of the belly of chaos and slowly chomps on those dirty Imperium
and survives.
Marines. Yeah,
it's almost like you've got some Nurgle stuff, right, Rob, to paint?
I have.
Yes.
I'm very excited by that. I was been painting them during the show. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you, John.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming on the show and giving us mere mortals who haven't had the opportunity to be at a tournament get a little insight into what's been going on around the world. We also, I can't bring myself to buy Defilers. Well, you can't buy them anywhere. They're sold out everywhere. And
it's like trying to buy a land speeder Typhoon. You just can't. Or Tempest even. Tempest, yeah. There we go.
What? Okay, and then so exciting times. Please do join me again tomorrow, and then also the 40k show on Thursday night, where we will be talking to Ace about Tyranids. Everyone has played Tyranids in 40k. Number 8 will surprise you as to why maybe you should or shouldn't, possibly. That's the real answer. John, you got any shout outs before we head out?
Shout out to Gozzy.
Also big shout out to Gozzy. Big shout out to him.
Why not?
All day. Number 8 will shock you. It will. I'd like to thank everyone of those who are getting Patreon. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank everyone on the podcast. You guys are great. My Hydro homies. And, of course, everyone in the Twitch chat. You're the Dark Angels of my heart Twitch chat. Because I never know if you're on my side or not. I'm going to
write poetry about...
Slam poetry. Warhammer Slam poetry evening.
Yeah.
I'm in. But yeah,
that's who Lionel Johnson was.
Did he do poetry?
The real Lionel Johnson was a poet that wrote poems, and I think they were kind of leaning into something that was at that point illegal, because he was of a different sexuality to a lot of people in that time. I think it was like 1800s type of thing. He was a gay poet, I think. The real Lionel Johnson, the actual guy that they nicked the name from.
Oh, was he a real person?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that at all. I was like, what? Was he a poet and he didn't know it? He was a poet and I didn't know it. That's the situation. Wow. Lionel Johnson did a poem called Dark Angel's Rib. That's the point. I did not know that at all. Oh my God.
Someone hasn't read the Lexicon article of Dark Angels.
I clearly haven't. Okay, well, and then he ended up in Hearthstone. Is he also in Hearthstone?
Oh, great.
Oh my god. Wow. That's amazing. All right,
You can ask Benjamin Sava, because didn't he get hooked on that?
He did. Well, listen, that just proves that Warhammer and poetry go hand in hand, and you guys should get involved in our Warhammer 40k slam poetry event coming soon. Streamed online. That's the plan. John, can't wait to see your entry. Everyone, Twitch chat, thank you very much. Have a great day. Look after yourselves. Here's the outro music.